Everyone, and welcome to day 4 of the Virtual Island Summit. I can't believe that we're already at day 4. This week has been packed with so many amazing sessions, and of course, thank you for joining this session. My name is Michaela Johnson, and I'm the Business Development Associate at Island Innovation. I'm based in the Caribbean, the beautiful Twin Island states of Trinidad and Tobago, to be exact. And please let us know where you're joining from in the chat. We'd love to know what countries are represented here today. If this is your first session for the week, I'd love to share a bit more about our organization and the work that we do. Island Innovation is a sustainable development consultancy primarily focusing on islands. Our services include island development strategies, impact program design and coordination, capacity building, events, strategic communications, and government affairs. We are trusted by clients around the globe, and if you're interested in learning more about our work, you can contact us using the contact information available in the chat. I am very happy to be presenting this session today titled Island Schools Leading Global Innovation, sponsored by the Edge Foundation. Before we begin, you should see a poll appear now on your screen. Please let us know your gender, where you are joining from, and the industry and sector that you belong to. From the chat, I see we have a wide range of people joining us today from so many different regions. We have Ireland, Portugal, Spain, Haiti, the Maldives, Somalia. Welcome, everyone. It's really great to see such a good, diverse group of people joining us. Island communities provide a unique setting for young people to grow up and prepare for life and for work, bringing huge benefits and challenges. Island schools worldwide are leading practice in many areas of education, from digital transformation to enable young people on remote islands to access education, to inclusive and innovative curricula to bring education to life. There are also some fantastic partnerships between island schools, enabling young people and teachers to connect and enrich their education experiences. In this session, you will learn more about how innovative island schools are leading the future of global education. I invite you to make use of the chat function, introduce yourself, and of course, make any comments during this session. And please make sure to use the Q&A function for any questions that you might have for our panelists, and we will do our best to address as many of them as possible at the end of the session when we get to the Q&A. All right, so let's take a look at the poll results from earlier. I see we have a very diverse group of people joining us, mainly from Europe and the Caribbean region. There's also representation from North America, South and Central America, Asia, Africa. And we also have a large number of persons joining us from the private sector, NGOs, and academia. Great to have everyone here with us today. So at this time, I will hand you over to our moderator for this session, Mr. Ollie Newton, Executive Director of the Edge Foundation. Ollie?
Thank you so much for that introduction, Michaela, and it's really great to be here. It's our 5th year, we were just saying, here at the Island Summit, and it's a great session. It's a great summit this year, and we're absolutely delighted to be part of it again. So I'm Ollie Newton, Exec Director at the Edge Foundation. We are a UK-based education foundation. Our mission is all around trying to make education more relevant, and so we love to find great, innovative examples of schools, colleges, higher education providers, and charities working in different parts of the world. We've been running our Island Education Network now for 5 years, so all of the time that we've been here at the summit. And it brings together island educators from schools and colleges, but also government colleagues working on education from the islands around the UK and from British Overseas Territories and islands around the world. So I'm going to pop a link into the chat when I finish speaking. Just to share a bit more about information about that network. And I'll also put my email address. So if people are interested in joining, you'd be very welcome. It's a chance for educators and people who are passionate about education from islands around the world to get together. One of the things I absolutely love about working with islands is that because, as Michaela said, island communities are so diverse, so innovative, so quick to pick up innovation and change, we've ended up with some amazing examples from islands around the world of schools and colleges that are really pushing the boundaries, that are really teaching the rest of the world how things should be done in terms of innovative curriculum, sustainability, connection to the real world, connections between islands. And we've picked 5 amazing examples to share with you today. So we're going to get straight into those conversations, and I'm going to ask some of our panelists to step forward and tell you their story. You're going to hear a bit from each of them, and then I'll come back on and we'll have a little chat together to draw out some of the points. And then when we've spoken to and heard from all six or five of our examples, all six of our panelists, we'll have time for questions. So feel free to put things in the chat for me to pick up and ask during that question session. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first fantastic speaker. It's Rachel Lewin, who's Deputy Head at Five Islands Academy on the Isles of Scilly. Rachel, tell us your story.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ollie and Michaela. I'm Rachel Lewin, and I'm really honoured to be the first person to speak on this education panel and to such a diverse global audience. It's really exciting to me from my very small island off the very southwest tip of England. I'm inviting you all aboard with me to explore the story of our education on the Isles of Scilly over the last 8 years, during which we have navigated our way from a place of real weakness, where our education had become really isolated, fragmented, unchallenging, and frankly, our only school was a failing school, to a stage where we have built our community and we've made really powerful connections to transform education, and to be able to say securely that our students have an outstanding offer on these tiny islands. So I am Deputy Head Teacher at Five Islands Academy, and it's in the Isles of Scilly. And for those of you who don't know Scilly, this is where we are, just here on the very southwest tip of the UK. There are 5 inhabited islands and hundreds of tiny little islets. It's a really unusual set of islands in that we're the only small island group in England, while in Scotland or in the Channel Islands, there are networks of different islands. We sit out here very much all alone in the Atlantic, 28 miles from Penzance. But we have really high ambitions for our children, and we've developed a vision which aims to offer learning without limits for all the children of the islands, inspired by our extraordinary environment, our really creative islands community, and the far-reaching horizons in every direction. Let me just tell you a little bit about the school. We are a through school. We're the only school on the islands. We have 250 students from age 4 to age 16. The school is split bases. There are 4 bases which serve 5 island communities. So there are really small primary bases on 3 of the off islands, as they're known, Tresco, St Martin's and St Agnes, which range in size from 2 pupils to 15 pupils. And then there's 1 main base on St Mary's. We join up all the islands, so primary off-island pupils boat to the main island of St Mary's every Friday to ensure breadth of curriculum and social opportunities with their peers. And our secondary off-island children board weekly at our state boarding house. So we are a state-run school, and our boarding house is completely free to the students. We are a highly connected school in terms of tech. Every child in the school has an iPad, and we've developed a really strong digital library through the Firefly learning platform, which enables students access to learning on storm days or if they're absent from school for any other reason. As the only school in the community, we're fully inclusive. No child is refused entry, so we have to make sure that we're providing an outstanding education for everyone, whatever their strengths and whatever their needs. We've had to go through a really painful, but also really inspiring and exciting process of rebuilding our school and the trust of our community, following an inspection from the UK Schools Inspectorate, Ofsted, in 2016, which placed the school into special measures. That means it's a failing school. We were forced to academise, to join an academy trust in the southwest of England. That's the Leading Edge Academies Partnership, which was one of the first sets of connections that helped us begin to move our school onwards. And since then, we've now been judged a good school with outstanding for personal development. We're so proud of our pupils and the really powerful sense of community that they create. And I'd like to talk to you today just briefly about some of the key elements of connectedness that we have focused on to create this school transformation journey. Firstly, it was really important to us when we started to rebuild our school to focus on our curriculum, to ensure that the actual education our children were getting was as powerful, as broad, and as exciting as what they would get in any mainland school. We started off by tracing through the whole school journey the kind of disciplinary concepts of every subject that children learn, and also looking at the key knowledge, the substantive concepts that they would build up over time to ensure that they had really kind of the building blocks of knowledge, which would enable them to become historians and scientists and mathematicians and artists over the course of their time there. One of the exciting things about this was that we were able to really build leadership in the whole school community. It's such a tiny school that in many subjects we only have one teacher. And those teachers in a mainland school would probably just be following the curriculum set by heads of department. For us, every teacher became a content creator, a curriculum designer, and a leader in their own subject. Over this period, they've become really empowered to lead with pride and to ensure that they are creating a really connected curriculum for the students. And the impact has been huge. When Ofsted visited us recently, they said that pupils follow a broad curriculum which expands their horizons and helps them keep their options open. They noted that it's designed to build logically right the way through from reception to the end of year 11, and that year on year it helps pupils to gain the knowledge and skills they need to be successful. The two little bits of data here are specific to the English education system, but the one on the left shows that at GCSE, when the external exams the students take at 16, the overall attainment was a grade 5.3. That's a high, strong pass. And you can see that the pink line up above over the last 4 years shows that it has been consistently higher than the national average, which is the dotted line below. But more excitingly, there's a measure in the UK called Progress 8, which measures the progress that students have made from their initial starting points. So it takes into account ability and prior attainment. And our Progress 8 figure last year was plus 0.73, which meant that our students got 0.7 of a grade higher than their peers across the whole country. And that's including students in schools which are selective or private schools. It put us up there in the top 10% of the country. And in fact, the data hasn't been published for this year formally yet, but our data is showing this year a Progress 8 score of over 1 grade. So our students are making fantastic progress. But it's not all about the knowledge. We also have focused on creating really strong connections with the community and also beyond our horizons. We've done this particularly through our building up of our restorative practice culture. We are a relational organisation and we're recognised by the Restorative Justice Council in the UK as a restorative organisation. We work with partners across the UK to really build up our students' ability to build relationships and to restore harm if harm is caused. And we create creative community connections throughout our curriculum, but particularly in our creative project weeks, where 3 times a year we have a complete drop down and all the students from the age of 4 to 16 work together on a topic such as Sustainable Silly, working on the sustainability of our islands with partners from universities, from organisations such as the Oceans Conservation Trust, and with local farmers and local tourism. These have been really powerful in rebuilding the trust of the community and making sure that we are fully connected with the people around us. We've also been very committed to creating cultural connections for our students, which was one of the outstanding points noted by Ofsted this year. I've actually just returned 2 days ago from 6 days in London with our whole Year 11 group. And these snaps are just pictures of some of the things we did to ensure that they are really broadening their horizons and preparing themselves for their journey of leaving the islands post-16. Because that is actually one of the biggest challenges on the Isles of Scilly. All the children at 16 have to leave to go to the mainland, and where they've been navigating together through our school journey up till then, after this, they disappear all over the place. They go to schools across the country, schools and colleges, and there's quite a low grant to parents for this of £6,350, which doesn't pay for boarding accommodation for the students. It does pay for students going and living in digs or with host families. But you can see from this little bit of data here that in comparison with the rest of England, many of our children after 16 don't manage to go to or stay in educational training after finishing Key Stage 4. And this is something that there's a lot of campaigning on the islands at the moment to try to improve this. And it's something that I'm really keen to learn from island colleagues across the world about how you support your students when they leave your islands. So just to sum up briefly, our connections that we've made on the Isles of Scilly to transform education have very much been built around that core connected curriculum. But we've also ensured that we're constantly ambitious about making inclusive connections, trying to develop a real offer for our students with special educational needs and disabilities. That's a challenge on a small community, like the challenge of moving on post-16. Our restorative, our cultural, and our creative connections. And I'd love to answer any questions that you have about this, or to be in contact with you after this panel to discuss what we do and what we can learn from you further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel. What a great way to kick off. Fantastic story from the Scilly Isles. I think you've introduced some themes that we're definitely going to come back to, things like project-based learning and those project weeks, things like the community connections that you talked about, and that issue of kind of outlying islands. So where you've got kind of a single island and then smaller islands, how to run that. But I wanted to just ask you a little bit about the experience of kind of the multi-academy trust coming, inverted commas, from the mainland, and how you kind of manage that relationship as a kind of island to make sure that they understood your community and you didn't feel like they were kind of coming from the outside to tell you what to do.
Well, actually, we've been really lucky. So our Academy Trust is Leading Edge Academies Partnership, and we were one of the 2 founding members of the trust. So there was just one sponsor school, and it was a trust that had a very strong commitment to project-based learning, to authentic outcomes, to really thinking creatively about education. They actually brought us a huge amount in terms of how we structured our curriculum, our school day. They helped us create huge amounts of change in the school. But I'm glad to say they were also really respectful of our islandness. And we fought for certain things where we didn't want to do exactly what was happening in the school in Penzance. And so actually our curriculum development project was very much our own project, and we have since become leaders across the trust. So many of our staff are now the subject champions in the trust for their subjects. We definitely had to give and take in the relationship to begin with, but it's meant that in the end, we've become a strong equal partner. And our island nature is one of the things that's exciting about that particular trust.
I love that story, Rachel. That's great that you're bringing expertise from your island elsewhere. And Pamela in the chat has rightly said islandness. What a fantastic word. Let's use that.
Yeah.
Let's borrow that. Fantastic. Rachel, thank you so much. We'll hear from you more as we pick up questions and discussion later on. But right
Thanks so
now,
much,
we are
Ollie.
going to jet 600 miles north from the southwest corner of the United Kingdom, where Rachel's based, to Stornoway in the Western Isles, where Richard Tarvis is joining us to tell us about eSchool, the online school that is based there. Richard, over to you.
Hello, Ollie. Thank you very much. That was really interesting listening to Rachel and lots of parallels, I think, with our own situation here, as I'm pleased to have the opportunity to share with you. If you can just confirm to me that you can see my slides there.
We can, Richard. Thank you.
Excellent. So, good afternoon, or Feskerma, as it here is in the Western Isles of Scotland, also known as the Outer Hebrides. You may have heard them referred to. We're the smallest of Scotland's 32 local authority areas with a population of around 25,000. And I mean, geographically, we're on the periphery. See if we can share a map with you. There we go. We're on the periphery of the UK. But as you'll see, when we're delivering online, the periphery can very much be front and centre. So eSchool's an online learning service, Schol being the Scots Gaelic word for school. The native language of this island chain is Gaelic, and that's similar to Irish Gaelic. And although for most residents English is now the first language here, the area remains a stronghold of the Gaelic language. And we felt it was important to reflect this heritage and really the position of Gaelic as a national language of Scotland in our name. But it can be confusing because we don't just deal in Gaelic. In fact, most of what we deliver is in English. So online learning can mean different things to different people, and hopefully, as you see from that clip, our USB is interactive teaching from qualified teachers directly into the classroom. They just happen to be on a screen. So a little bit of the backstory. eSchool began in 2016 as what we thought was a local solution to a local problem, that of acute teacher shortage. The maths teacher in the southernmost island of the chain had to leave partway through the year, and there was no supply cover available. So we thought, how are we going to get the students through their course and their final exam? We had a teacher with some capacity, albeit they were 120 miles and several islands to the north. But we thought we'd give video conferencing a try and see if we could just get the pupils through the year. We thought it would be a sticking plaster solution, but those pupils actually reported that they really enjoyed that way of learning, and they all did well in their exams. So we looked from there to widen the provision to match spare teaching capacity in one area with demand in another. So our four island secondary schools, they range in size from fewer than 100 learners to the sort of 1,000 plus that you typically expect to see in urban centres on the mainland. And as you can expect, there are big differences in the range of subject choices and progression pathways that we can provide, or that these schools can provide when they're so different in size. So we began to use video conferencing as a tool to broaden that range of provision available in the smaller schools and make a more equitable offer of education to young people, no matter where they happen to live in the islands. And this developed into a complete review of our curriculum rationale, which starts not with the current curriculum, but with the skills that young people will need to thrive in the future world of work. Like many island locations, one of the Outer Hebrides' biggest exports is our young people, and we're faced with really worrying projections of population decline, particularly amongst working age people. So for us, creating well-paid and fulfilling careers based in islands is a particular focus. At the heart of this work is the principle of equity of opportunity for all. So it's something that eSchool strives for in everything that we do. Our model began to attract attention from around Scotland, and partnerships quickly emerged with other education authorities, and they were seeking either the input of specialist supply teachers or other collaborations. And here's one such example of a cultural exchange between schools in Outer Hebrides and in Shetland, where they shared Gaelic culture and the Shetland experience of the Uphellia Viking celebrations there. We shared our enthusiasm for the huge potential that this way of working has with the Scottish Government, and we were able to secure financial backing to take on a national remit then as an online educational service. And this is an indication of our footprint. Now, I hope this is clear to you. On the left, we've got the footprint of our learners across Scotland, and on the right, where our staff are located. So while retaining our headquarters here in Stornoway, we quickly established a large bank of supply teachers all across the country and a distributed management team, most of whom work from home. We attract those who appreciate the benefits of flexible working, and that includes recently retired or semi-retired teachers, perhaps those with caring responsibilities. Maybe teachers themselves have disabilities or conditions which prevent them from working in a physical classroom or make that difficult, so online teaching can work for them. We also employ a number of people who find that there are limited work opportunities locally. They might only have part-time hours in a local school, and in some cases we can top up those hours to make their life on an island sustainable. We had one teacher actually who relocated to Spain, and she continued to teach there for a year while she was there, and then she returned back to Scotland. So we offer very flexible conditions for teachers. So we established this national footprint, and then the COVID pandemic hit. And having that national footprint by that point, we were well placed to offer an educational safety net to Scottish schools who didn't have the full contingency plans in place. We worked closely with Education Scotland at that point, and we established a number of programmes under the brand of the National e-Learning Offer, as it's become, most of which continue to this day and are aiding both post-pandemic recovery and the reform of the education system to better meet the needs of today's learners. So these programmes include an evening and a holiday study support programme that gives senior learners access to live interactive webinars with subject specialists across 60 different national qualification courses, and also a work-related learning programme in which we work with more than 88 industry partners and employers, and we bring those experts into classrooms where they wouldn't otherwise be able to. Both of these programmes have uptake in every local authority area in Scotland, and there's various kind of stats there for levels of engagement. You can read all about these initiatives in our impact report, and I'll maybe pop the link for that in the chat thread at the end, Ollie. But I'd like to take a moment just to highlight another area of our work, which is with interrupted learners. So those who can't attend their own school very often for reasons of poor mental health. I'm sure, like ours, schools in your area report increased numbers of non-attendance and complete disengagement from school, particularly post-pandemic. So we've started an entirely online school for these interrupted learners. We've called it iSchool, but with only 180 on board at the moment, and that's the maximum we can take just now, we know we're only scratching the surface of the problem. Young people join those lessons from home using Microsoft Teams, and we put no pressure on them in terms of their initial level of engagement. So even a thumbs up acknowledgement in the chat can be a breakthrough moment for some of them. And Kate was one such young person who'd retreated to her bedroom and completely disengaged from the world, but is now happy to share her experience. And I'll just do that with you just now, hopefully. Or maybe not. Kate, are you there? That's a pity. I'll come back to that if I have a chance, Ollie, but I don't want to hold up the rest of the programme. wonder if I stop sharing for a second and then reshare, if I'll maybe get the final slide back up. But it was really just an illustration of our the courses offer that we're now providing for schools across the country of certificated learning, which we're looking to build on, develop that range of courses, and hopefully establish a permanent national digital academy in line with the Scottish Government's manifesto. So however we develop, we won't forget our island roots, and particularly the needs of the Outer Hebrides young people, of that principle of equity of opportunity for all. I'd welcome any questions you might have, or observations, or offers of collaboration. Indeed, we always like to talk to collaborators, and apologies for the technical problem with that clip there.
No problem at all, Richard. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and maybe we can send the link out to that little video at the end as well, so people can have a look at it, even if we
That'd
can't
be
make
great.
it work.
It's very powerful to hear from somebody who had shut herself off completely from learning, and indeed from the outside world altogether. And it's not so much what she says in that clip, and it's frustrating it didn't play, as the assured confidence that she had. And for us, it's really gratifying to see she's gone off to university now. And from that clip, you would think she was going into a career in media. And this is somebody who was one of those people who could maybe only just, put an emoji to tell us that she was there. And gradually she put on her mic, she put on her camera, and really blossomed. So it's a really important aspect to the work that we're doing.
Yeah, that's amazing to see that transformation. That must give you and the team a real boost. It feels like you've kind of developed a couple of the themes there from Rachel's presentation as well. Some really nice kind of themes already emerging. I love this point about kind of islands teaching the mainland a lesson. So that point about the Scottish Government kind of coming to you during COVID because you were already there. Because of the island situation, you were already teaching in that way, and you became the experts. I think that's such a powerful story. I think what you've been saying around kind of the opportunities that your way of teaching offers to young people with special educational needs and disabilities, and also the opportunity to teach young people in outlying islands as well, is going to be a theme that we kind of come back to. But I wonder if I could just ask you to say a little bit more about how you kind of develop the sense of community, even with those students who are perhaps not physically located all the time or at all. How do you kind of make them feel part of your kind of eSchool family?
Well, it's a privileged position that we're in, because these young people do begin to open up to us, and I don't know if it's just that some of their barriers to engagement that they might face in their own kind of bricks and mortar school are taken away. But what we do now have is a community that's big enough that they find commonality with other young people where they might not in their own school. They might be feeling isolated there. But we can set up lunch clubs and so on online in the same way that you could in person. And they do have that common experience of feeling like they struggle to engage in person at school, by and large. And so I think they take a degree of comfort from that and almost naturally form a community themselves. We try and foster interaction between them in terms of their own interests and so on. But because they don't have to engage it's entirely on their terms. They're coming to us from their safe space, very often from a bedroom at home. It gives them the freedom to open up to one another as well as to us, and form that sense of community. So it is very gratifying to see.
That's amazing, Richard. Such a powerful story. Thank you so much. We're going to take a look at island collaboration next, and we've got a double act to make that happen. So I'm going to welcome Will Quirk, who's a teaching fellow at the University of Strathclyde, and Christina Rundle, who is a study coordinator on sustainability studies at the University of Alpstad Sigmaringen. So Will, Christina, we'd love to hear about the work you've done to help islands collaborate. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So on behalf of Christina and I'd like to say that we are delighted to be sharing our work with you. So we're going to be talking about the Island Schools project, which is an Erasmus Plus project that was 3 years long and looked towards collaborating or building or facilitating collaboration between European islands. As Ollie said, my name is Will Quirk. I'm a teaching fellow at the University of Strathclyde, and now I will hand myself over to Christina.
Yes, hello also from my side. It's very nice to be here and have the opportunity to present our project, Island Schools. the Erasmus Plus project I will in a moment tell you a bit more about. My name is Christina Rundel. I work at the moment at the University of Albstadt-Sigmaringen. I recently obtained my PhD at the University of Groningen, and during that time I had the opportunity to work together with Will and other colleagues on this project, which we recently also finished, and we're very happy to present our results to you today. So, but what actually is the Erasmus Plus project Island Schools? So here on the map on the right-hand side, you can see the countries which were involved. We were diverse partners from 5 countries, from Greece, Iceland, Scotland, Spain, and the Netherlands. And from the islands, we had mainly schools involved, and these were Astipalaya from Greece, Barra from Scotland, Riese from Iceland, and Vlieland in the Netherlands. And we also had some rural schools in Valencia involved. And we started this project actually with the aim to create a sustainable future for education in island communities, especially looking at it from the aspect of demographic developments, because these islands which were involved in the project, they have at the moment still often a slight increase in population, but looking in the future, especially looking at how many families are also migrating. I mean, of course, it depends really to look at the islands in specific, like every island is also different in that. But looking a bit in the future, what would it mean if there are not so many children in the future anymore on these islands?
So the project had a number of outputs that we're happy to share with you this morning, this evening, this afternoon, wherever you are in the world. So the first one here that we've highlighted is a set of policy briefings for island schools. Christina's going to talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes, but I'm just going to take some time to highlight the learning and teaching materials and resources that have been produced as part of this project. So the university partners and our school partners work together to develop 3 units of work. These are sustainable tourism, ocean plastics, and sustainable transport. And each of these units of work have been trialed and tested by our school partnerships. So by the schools in Greece, the Netherlands, in Scotland, and in Iceland. These learning materials also follow a very similar structure, which is outlined on the next slide. Thank you. So it's focused on a backcasting approach. So when we were developing these materials, we were very aware of essentially that every island is unique, even though they're all European islands. We had to maintain this element of, I suppose, islandness there, but also developing a set of resources that are built around shared sustainability challenges that these island schools might face. So as an example, one challenge might be ocean plastics. And as part of the 7 or 8 sessions that are outlined in these teaching materials, partner schools work together and collaborate to come up with a solution to this shared sustainability challenge. And they incorporated this element of online learning and collaboration in order to do so. So there was an element of place-based learning there where young people had to explore their own island settings and then showcase it to their partner school on the partner island. Then once they've showcased their islands to each other, they then identified a shared sustainability issue based on the theme, and then they worked together in groups to come up with a solution to that issue and then shared it with the people around them. There was a looking back, looking forward element to this. So backcasting was the approach that we used here, where young people envisioned their ideal scenario for the particular issue that they faced, and then they took steps back from that to identify the steps that would need to be taken in order to solve or mitigate that particular issue. If there are any island educators or people interested in island education on this call, there are steps that you can take to get involved, which are going to be outlined on the next slide. So if you are somebody that would like to use these materials, or you would like to be partnered up with an island school if you're on an island setting, on the next slide, Christina, there's going to be some information. So we do have a website that you can visit, which is islandschools.eu. We are very lucky to get that domain. So when you go on there, there are several tabs, but you can go onto our Island Schools online platform, which is found in the results tab. And there we have a matching scan. So if you are on an island school in Europe and you would like to get in touch with other island schools, you can search for the age group that you teach, the size of your island, the size of your population, and so on, to find other interested schools that have signed up. If you are a school that isn't on a European island, but you are still interested, the materials, the learning and teaching materials for the 3 units are also available on our website. So if you are interested in using those, Christina and I and the rest of the team would be delighted to hear how they go in your settings. I also know that some of these materials are being used in rural schools in Scotland too, and schools along coastal areas, so they can be applicable to many different settings. Okay, so over to you, Christina.
Yes, so as a next step, I would tell you quickly still a little bit more about our research methodology we used to actually develop the policy recommendations, which was one part of the project. So on the right-hand side, you can already see some pictures of some of the outcomes and also from the meetings themselves. You can also see that some of the pupils even had the opportunity to also present their findings from the project. So we hosted regional stakeholder meetings in all the countries. Different setups were used though, because we had to bring as many stakeholders as possible together, which all had, of course, their opinion to bring in. So sometimes it was more handy to either meet directly on the island or on the mainland, and some of the setups were also online just to get as many people as possible involved. So we used an action research approach. We were, as researchers, also actively participating, of course, not trying to being part of it too much, but to kind of steer, of course, also the meetings in that sense. We had in the end, luckily, various experts from different functions and also from different fields involved. So altogether, from all the meetings, we had 72 participants. And that were, of course, teachers and heads, but then also policymakers from local and regional level, NGOs, but also businesses, and then also organizations like the forest management, NGOs. So it was quite diverse, and we were really happy about that. And we'll come now to present to you our main findings from that. So, of course, we had also really country-specific findings, which we will also quickly say about something in a minute from our 2 countries, which were also involved. But we also found during all the 5 meetings some commonalities, like some findings which were also kind of discussed, or at least in a similar way, during all the meetings. So one of the main points, it was 4 in total, is the call for more flexibility for the schools, and that kind also power for island schools. That doesn't only involve teachers, but also the pupils, and to kind of have a better opportunity to also integrate the communities themselves in the decision making. So some examples of that kind of costume work is actually to allow also place-related teaching, also expertise usage from the islands. So people who are already on the islands, who can bring in a lot of their insights, which they already have into the teaching, was mentioned. And also to, for example, inspection and assessment, to make that more flexible in that sense. Then the next point is the call for place space policies and island proofing. So that we've also discussed a lot that there is not the typical island school in that sense. They're all different, but that regulations take this into account, also the island schools and also the island communities more in general, to suggest policy proofing. Then another main finding was that there is really a call for more exchange and collaboration, and then not only among the island schools, but also on an international level, but also with remote schools, among teachers, pupils. So to also have the opportunity to share best practices. Then the last point is still that specific teaching and community needs was something discussed. So that there is basically more room for example, overarching teaching topics. So for example, to what we really worked on in this with these teaching materials to implement sustainable change. And then also to be not just be seen as the island schools which are needy, but that they're actually really role models for other schools in that sense. So because there's really this testing and innovative environment, I think we also heard that a bit in other sessions already. It is a nice opportunity to learn from island schools as well. And this inclusive teaching approach, for example, with mixed groups can be really an example for other schools. And also the wider community function was discussed a lot. So for meeting and learning in general for the community. And then I will still hand over to Will about the country-specific policy recommendations.
Thanks, Christina. I'll be very brief. So if you want to read more about our policy recommendations, the document is available on our website as well. I popped the link there to the chat. But in Scotland in particular, the findings there related to using the flexibility in the current system. So Scotland has an Islands Act that was introduced in 2018 that looks at island proofing. So all policies that are introduced that may affect islands have to go through a version of an audit to look at the impact there. But also the national curriculum in Scotland, as you can see from Richard's presentation, is quite varied. So allows for lots of movement and flexibility there. So islands have great opportunities to utilize that to incorporate sustainability education into their settings. And then, Christina, do you have a quick point about the Dutch example?
Yes, I will be very, very brief with it. Exactly. So the Netherlands, that was really discussed that also this flexibility, which I mentioned in the first point, that this is very important to the teachers, that they receive more flexibility, how they steer their schools. But then it also really came to broader policy issues, so that everything is, of course, also integrated or to be seen integrated, because housing and transportation policies, for example, really play an important role or also influence a lot on how the schools function, how the teachers are moving, how the pupils are moving. I think we also heard that in one of the previous presentations. And in all the meetings was actually this case from Scotland really seen as a very nice example with the policy briefing, and this kind of wat and toots, which I wrote here down, is something that really would like to introduce also in the Netherlands. Yeah. So then I will still go to our last slide and want to say thank you very much for listening, and we'll hand over quickly still to Will.
Yes, so thank you very much, everyone, and we're looking forward to answering any questions that you might have.
That's brilliant. Will, Christina, that was so inspirational. So good to see those connections happening kind of right across the different countries, which is fantastic. I loved what you said about the schools in Valencia kind of being part as well. And I think that's just such an important lesson. Certainly, we use a lot of what we learn on islands when we're influencing particularly rural or coastal communities on the mainland, where actually they share a lot of similarities, as we all know. And I love what you're doing in terms of influencing policies as well. So using these what you're learning from the schools to then directly influence policies on the islands and on the mainland too. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about, we're finding here so much common ground between islands all around the world as we discuss it. But what were some of the things that kind of were common factors amongst the schools that were on islands in different parts? What were the kind of challenges or similarities that they shared?
Oh, that is a good question. So I think the one example that comes to mind, and Christina, feel free to chip in as well, but because this was an Erasmus Plus project, it involved an element of exchange. So the young people that were involved in the project were able to visit their partner islands in some cases and meet the people that they've been working with. But that wasn't the case in every scenario. So for example, because Scotland's part of the UK, there was that barrier there between their partner school and Greece. So unfortunately, an exchange wasn't able to take place there. But the discussions that the young people that did manage to meet up in person had were really interesting. So it was like, what time does your ferry come at, and how many ferries do you have? So identifying this common shared lifestyle, but in a very different cultural context, was really interesting just to earwig in, I think. Christina, do you have anything to add to that?
No, exactly. I think that was a very interesting finding how they really, for example, with ocean plastic, also recognized, oh, you have the same problem, but then also somehow in a different way. So to see this kind of dynamics, and also I think there was also this example from Iceland with the exchange just about food, how different food can be, of course, and being actually in the also island environment and all these little communications, learnings. You really saw this steep learning curve. I mean, I myself was unfortunately not there to be part of it, but that's just also what the teachers told, and that they were so inspired, and that the students really learned a lot. Yeah.
I love that. That's so good. I mean, it's always such a powerful thing to get young people together from different contexts. And I think, yeah, on the one hand, they think that things are very different because their cultural dishes or their food is different. But actually, when they get talking for 5 minutes, they realize that things are so united, so similar. Your point about the ferries, Will, that there's so much more that unites us than divides us. So a very powerful conversation. Christina, Will, thank you so much. That was absolutely great. You will have seen if you're in the audience that our presenters have been answering some of the questions in the Q&A as well, so keep those coming. If they're simple things, then I'd love it if presenters could answer those in writing, and if they're kind of more big topics, we'll pick those up in the Q&A at the end. Thank you guys so much. Lovely to cross now to the Caribbean and to welcome Kisma Jean-Pierre, who is founder and principal at Mill Academy in Antigua and Barbuda. Kisma, it's great to have you with us, and really looking forward to hearing your story.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here. And I bring greetings from the beautiful island of Antigua and Barbuda. It is a privilege to be here to speak on a topic that is very close to my heart: island schools leading global innovation. I'm especially excited to share how Mill Academy is not only part of this movement, but is also driving it here on the Twin Island state of Antigua and Barbuda. Mill Academy began as a childhood dream of mine, one that took root in my heart many years ago. So growing up, I always had a deep passion for education, especially for helping others to reach their full potential. This dream, it became a mission over time, and it evolved to something bigger than I could have ever imagined. For over a decade, I taught students downstairs in the basement of my house. And what started as a small effort to tutor young people in my community turned into a thriving educational space. And of course, it wasn't always easy, but the sight of students gaining confidence, achieving their goals, and growing into empowered individuals, that kept me going. And each child that passed through those doors reinforced my belief that education can indeed transform lives. So in 2021, in the heart of the pandemic, my dream received a spark that changed everything. I met a kindred spirit, someone who shared my passion for education, and he believed in the vision of creating a school that would serve even more students. And this individual, he not only supported my dream, but took a bold step, and he founded the construction of what is now Mill Academy Limited. And I will share our website at the end so that you can go and follow us on social media and see what we're doing. Together, we built a place where students can learn, where they can grow, and where they can thrive in an environment designed for their success. But we didn't stop there. Our mission has always been about creating opportunities for all, especially those who face financial barriers. And that's why today we invite others, individuals, businesses, and organizations to join us in this journey. We are seeking partners who are passionate about providing bursaries and financial support for less fortunate children, because together we can ensure that these children, they share in a unique experience that the Mill Academy Limited offers. It's an experience that's grounded in growth, empowerment, and boundless possibility. As we know, and as it has been a common theme so far from all of the presenters, island schools have a unique position in the global educational landscape. We are often seen as small, isolated communities, but this perception couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, and as all of you have indicated so far, we are hubs of creativity, resilience, and adaptability, qualities which are essential for innovation. And at Mill Academy, we embrace these qualities, demonstrating that island schools are at the forefront of educational progress. Our institution was founded on the belief that education should be more than just academic achievement, It should be a vehicle for personal and professional growth, equipping students with the mindset and skills they need to succeed in this fast-changing, interconnected world. And this belief is embedded in everything that we do here at Mill. So first, let's talk about our curriculum. While many schools focus solely on traditional subjects, Mill Academy Limited takes a broader approach, integrating entrepreneurial thinking, leadership, and emotional intelligence into our educational programs. We believe that these are the skills that will set our students apart globally. We're not just teaching students to pass exams. No, we're doing more than that. We are cultivating critical thinkers, innovators, problem solvers, and future leaders who will shape industries and communities both here at home and on the world stage. Our curriculum provides a real-life experience to our primary schoolers who are between the ages of 4.5 and 12 years old. So let's look at what a typical day looks like. A typical day at Mill exposes our eager learners to Mandarin, French, or Spanish, and that may be followed by a core subject, either math, English, science, or social studies. Then they get a chance to soak up some vitamin D while they engage in physical education outdoors, followed by expressions of their artistic skills in either a music class, probably it's a steel pan, or a traditional music, the guitar, the keyboard, or during art or craft. And they engage with technology in robotics, coding, or regular IT. Once a week, the students engage in a yoga class, which helps them to center themselves. And on a Friday afternoon, the entire school is out getting their hands dirty as they excitedly tend to their vegetable garden. And as we enter our second year of operation, we continue to see the impact that such a diverse educational experience can have on otherwise unhappy and disengaged students. Second, we leverage technology and global collaboration. Our island location does not limit us, it empowers us. We are currently working with Sandals Foundation, who has approved funding to finish a smart classroom where we will be able to connect our students with experts, mentors, and fellow learners from around the world. So I'm hoping to collaborate with some of you who have already spoken and the others to come to see how we can make those partnerships happen. And this is how Mill Academy Limited will bridge the gap between local and global knowledge. We teach our students to think beyond geographical boundaries, to see themselves as part of a global network of innovators. And lastly, we emphasize a mindset of dreaming big. At Mill Academy, we understand that innovation starts with a vision. We encourage our students to see their ideas as valuable, to pursue their passions, and to understand that they can create change. They learn that even from a small island, they can impact the world. And as the founder, I am a living testament to this. I am an islander who has reached global stages, inspiring young minds and empowering women around the world. So in conclusion, Mill Academy stands as a beacon of what island school can achieve. We are not constrained by our size or location. As a matter of fact, we started last year with 8 students, and this year we have 28, but we're growing, and we are very proud of that. Instead, we use these as opportunities to foster innovation, inspire big dreams, and prepare our students to lead in a globalized world. Together as island schools, we are shaping the future of education, just as you have all indicated. One student, one idea, one innovation at a time. Mill Academy is not just a school. It's a testament to what dreams, collaboration, and determination can achieve. We look forward to welcoming more others as we continue to transform lives, one student at a time. And all in all, I will take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Kisma. What a great presentation, inspirational stuff. I loved what you said about from an island they can reach the world, and that's what's happening right now in this session. And isn't that a great message to your students as well? I wanted to pick up a bit about what you were talking about around kind of what motivates, what engages learners. And I think we're seeing right across the UK, right across the world, this challenge of like a very traditional, I'm going to say boring curriculum, English, maths, the traditional subjects taught in a very traditional way, chalk and talk from the front. And then we wonder why young people are not very engaged and maybe they're behaving badly. Tell us a little bit about what you found really engages, what motivates your learners.
Yeah, so essentially it's the way that even the timetable is set, and making sure that you have more than just the traditional subjects. And that's from the start what we made sure of. So we have to teach them the math, the English, the science, and the social studies. And even if you needed to teach it traditionally, it is important to have that interspersed with something else. So they go to yoga where they're learning to meditate and relax and just get loose all of the stresses that they may have developed in a math class. Then they go outdoors, they're getting some sun, they're getting re-energized, they're getting grounded, because a lot of our students actually take their shoes off and they're happy to be barefoot, and we allow them. Then they go out into the garden, so they're planting, they're taking care of something, they're doing the robotics and the coding, and so it's just not focusing on this math, language, science, social studies. But even in those classes, it's so important to bring those lessons alive. So here at Neil, our social studies teacher, she will come, if she's teaching the children about pollution, she comes dressed with a costume and there's litter all over her. She's a living, breathing, littered example of what should not be done. You know, that it's just bringing in the creativity and allowing the children's mind to soar. Just this morning, one of my teachers was telling me that the students want to experiment with a floating garden. So that's the chinampas in history, and that came up in a totally different subject. And so when one of the panelists mentioned about the curriculum and it being integrated, that's also what we have here. We are integrating our curriculum, so they're not doing things in isolation, but everything is joined in one way, shape, or form. So it brings together the learning and it makes sense for them.
I love that point, Kismet. Absolutely, bringing it to life, connecting it to real life, and making it inspirational just makes such a difference to young people's learning goals, their concentration, and kind of getting the most out of it. Thank you so much, Kismet. And last but not least, we're going to bring in our final panelist. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome Carol Swainson, who is the principal of Bermuda High School for Girls. Carol, over to you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here and a real honor to get to share a bit about Bermuda High School. It's a wonderful location here in Bermuda, which, as someone who has migrated from the United States, a lot of folks are not totally sure where it is. The triangle really isn't a thing. I just always have to make sure people understand that. But we are a school that is about 600 and some odd miles off the coast of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. So that's our closest landfall. And we are 21 square miles of amazing, beautiful country, and lots of innovators here. Bermuda High School was founded in 1894 as a girls' school for families who couldn't afford to send their girls off to England for their education. So we've been doing this for 130 years now. Ironically, over the time, we've actually been a school that has embraced boys at different times. Sometimes the young boys would come to the younger years, and sometimes they've graduated in their senior years. Currently, we have a few brave boys in our senior years program, being the last 2 years of their school. We are also a school that is a British curriculum. We have GCSEs, and we're super proud of those. They just came out. Our results, 49.5% of them were A stars. We have a long, long tradition of academic success at our school. One of the things that I'm particularly proud of is that in the last 16 years, we've had 15 Rhodes Scholars from our schools in our alumni cohort. We also are an international baccalaureate school, and we just started doing A-levels this year, and we'll graduate our first cohort in 2025. We are 590-ish students strong, with students ages from 4 years old all the way up to 18-year-olds. One of the other things that we're very proud of is we are a round square school, which sort of fits in with a lot of this island innovation piece. Round square schools are committed to international relations, democratic process, undertake environmental stewardship, experience adventure, assume leadership positions, and engage in service outreach, both locally and globally. So our students get a chance to engage in that, and we really try to keep that international feel. A lot of that is accomplished sometimes by our students going out and about, but also we use technology to bring the world to us, just as you have brought in this summit today of bringing everyone together. Our mission is that of creating a dynamic and inclusive learning environment that fosters intellectual curiosity, community consciousness, and resilient independence. Our students are empowered to develop their individual potential and step into the world boldly, responsibly, and joyfully. And I think, given some of the comments that have been made today, that joyful piece is a very important part, as many folks have made a nod to the challenges that we're all facing with mental health issues around the world, and that how we keep these students resilient, how we keep them engaged into the ever-changing world that they're inheriting. One of the things that I want to talk about is that we are really proud that in 2020, we opened an innovation center here, and we're the only one on the island. It means that we have a makerspace. We also, as a girls' school, we have a boardroom. One of the goals of that funder was to make sure that that room was available for girls to walk into a boardroom when they're in year 7, whether in year 6, whether they're in primary or secondary. They will have walked into a boardroom before they become a grown-up, and they are comfortable with the space that is there. And that is a beautiful thing to see these students holding discussions, holding forums, holding symposiums, speaking to our board of trustees through there. So those are some of the things that make us really excited in using our innovation center. We also have a makerspace and a whole creative arts space that allows the students to engage in a lot of STEAM projects, anywhere from robotics, but also the sewing and building and constructing with tools, real tools and things like that. Some of the things, though, that I'd like to talk about in using that innovation center is just really letting us know that we did that in 2020. We opened that space, but like the rest of us, we all of a sudden were struck with the pandemic. So what we are focusing on right now here in Bermuda are several things that are absolutely critical, which is that we have a post-pandemic student body, and we have a post-pandemic parenting group of people in the age of technology, and in which people have concerns about sustainability on an island that has an aging population with declining birth rates, just like the rest of the world, and a reduced population and size. And we also happen to be one of the most expensive countries in the world. So in my 33rd year of education, one of the ways that I like to look at this, and as we are doing this as a school, is to look at innovation like renovation. What's old is new again. So we are focusing on several things here in several of our projects. I just want to speak to you about 3 real things that we're doing here that I think are important. One is that big piece of focusing on mental health, or as I like to say, mental fitness or mental hygiene is the approach that we're trying to do. We all know that happy children are ready to learn, and they're ready to become well-adjusted adults. So that's one of the points. I'm going to share a few things there. The other topic will be about just the academic innovation that we're engaged in, and I'll describe that. And then the last part, as an island school, how are we helping families to see that that graduating from a school in Bermuda is really in their best interest, and that we have so much to offer that is really unique. I think a lot of times people are thinking, oh, you're on an island school, you might not have certain resources. We're actually really rich in resources here in Bermuda. And so I want to talk a little bit about that as well. So those are the 3 things, because these are ones that we really want to bring to our community, but also realize that I think there are advantages of being an island school. You know, it's all about perspectives. And when you come with different ones, you realize sometimes it's like, I'm not at a disadvantage, I actually have an advantage because I'm coming from an island nation where we are impacted by issues of sustainability much more acutely than other parts of the world. So first, I want to just speak about mental health fitness. We have just recently, a survey was done here in Bermuda, and it was on mental health. And what we found was that the average here in Bermuda around challenges around anxiety and other mental health difficulties, we are higher than the global average, which is an interesting phenomenon. So as an educator, we know, especially as a girls' school, because in that cohort, of course, girls are much more anxious in many ways. So we're always concerned about, well, what are we doing to address that as a school? And how can we creatively address those issues? So we have this year and last year, we've been working on ways to do that. By reducing this year, we have all embraced a lot of the work from Jonathan Haidt and his book, Anxious Generation, in which he puts a lot of research together to help us understand what we can do to reduce anxiety in students. So reducing social media is certainly something that's an important piece, and screen time are things that we're doing. It's been a lot of fun letting students know that their devices can't be used on campus and asking parents to support that. But we feel we've already witnessed the benefits of it and seeing students doing what they developmentally need to do, which is to face each other, talk to each other, engage with each other, build community with each other, and be connected. We've also been reducing our time. We have a one-to-one laptop school for our secondary students. So we've been reducing the time with the laptops and spending a lot of energy on trying to make sure that we have the students choosing to use them. As a school, again, that does GCSEs and so forth, those exams are on paper. So we do end up using a lot of paper and things like that. But we're working on that approach to technology, because the corollary we have now with all the research really is showing us that it's impacting mental health in a lot of ways. It's actually impacting the community as well. As adults, we are actually trying to see each other more face to face, emailing in the office and so forth. We've realized that difference in everything. And we're also looking to bring our parents into the school even more and asking them to be present and face to face, so that we can, again, strengthen our relationship and have a positive connection. The parents are also engaging. We've added more parent education. We have some parents who are engaged in book clubs. They'll be reading Anxious Generation, another book called Raising Kids by Sherry Glukoff Wong, and really speaking to that, but asking and encouraging parents to work together to create a more play-based childhood for their children rather than a phone-based one. And that's something that's important. Additionally, we have been, and this is why I say what's old is new again, restorative practice and restorative justice has been around a long time, but we are doubling down on that, just as I heard one of the other schools talking about engaging in that. You know, when you've been around for a while, you see it all repeat back again. So innovation, renovation, it's all the kind of same thing. And then we're also talking about metacognition. And this one falls under the academic piece that I want to speak about, but it also falls under the mental health piece. Metacognition, I always like to say to children, is like, it's where your own parent, the one who keeps your time, that reminds you to do tasks, helps you to get organized so you can get everything done. We are spending a lot of energy on that because one of the challenges that comes from those post-pandemic parents who are worried about, what's my child going to do? The whole generation of making things, over-programming kids and things like that, where everything feels like it is. And I take this from Susanna Cole. She's a wonderful person here on the island who's talked to our community. She has a book out as well. Titles just escaped my brain, but she actually really reminds us we have to make sure that we don't turn practice situations into performance situations. So there are times there's performance zones and then there's practice zones. And a lot of times we have been in schools, and I've witnessed this in schools in the United States that I've worked in, where people are feeling that something that was a practice zone is actually a performance zone. And that's causing a lot of anxiety. So it's all connected in there. And we're spending a lot of time creating structures and connections with that. Additionally, within that, we're looking at artificial intelligence, AI, and its relationship. We worked with Stanford last year, and one of the things that we learned from that process is that there are lots of young people who are engaged, as a professor at Stanford was saying, that AI, one of her students is on her third AI boyfriend. So we are looking at the challenges that creates for them and how we can make sure that they then have a healthy, responsible, and thoughtful attitude towards that. Moving on to the academic innovation.
Just a moment more.
Okay, absolutely. Just really quickly, we have a whole bunch of neurodivergent learners, and that also comes from that pandemic piece. A lot of learning was lost, a lot of socialized learning, learning how to be students, a lot of things were there. So we've been spending time on those things. And I have to say, with those results that we got, Carol Dweck's concept that a growth mindset can grow your academic performance has been realized. But the part that's more meaningful with this generation is the STEAM part, which is that hands-on piece and that sustainability initiatives piece. Students want meaningful learning. They want purposeful experiences. And so we have a whole bunch of a STEAM week that we engage in, but in our Innovation Center, we're starting to work on growing more food and aquaponics and other kinds of things that are real that'll help the students' academic access to learning. And those are important parts. And then finally, the last part that we're doing here in Bermuda, and this is why I feel like island schools can be such leaders, and I appreciate this forum for this, is that when you're in an island school, the students have access to things locally that a lot of folks in large countries don't have access to. So our students get to be in professional, amateur theater performances, art shows, they're on the radio, they have opportunities with NASA, they get a chance to represent their country. We just had a Paralympian in Paris representing Bermuda. We've had them at the CRIFTA Games. They also have access to lots of different scholarships and things. All of those things it's a little different when you're coming from a place like this. So one of our pieces is also to, as we look at our populations and the conditions that we're in, is to remind folks that in our little 21 square miles, we have a lot to offer. And we want to continue to connect with that through our Round Square program, which gives those exchanges and gives us a chance for us to show off our island, as well as a chance to learn from and connect with others. So I thank you for the time here. And I really appreciate that folks are talking about sort of this whole solidarity concept. I've done a lot of trips with students where if we're really connecting with each other, it can strengthen us to do some things that we're thinking about in that. And so thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Carol. What a great high to end on. Thank you so much. I'd like to invite all of our panelists to come back onto camera. We've got a little bit of time to pick up some themes between the presentations. And then I'm giving you guys advance notice that I'm going to ask each of you at the end just for your one wish for island education for the next decade, so that is on your radar. So I wanted to pick up a theme that has really come through a lot of the presentations, and you touched on it there with your Innovation Hub, Carol, and Kisma, you were talking about it as well. But it's this idea of kind of community connection from your school or from your college out to the wider community in the island, because even more than in mainland situations, that your schools are becoming kind of community hubs. So let me bring Kisma in on that first. How do you kind of bring the rest of the community into the school, not just the kids?
So essentially at Mill Academy, we have what we call our Town Hall Tuesdays, and where we discuss different topics that are affecting not just the students, but the community as a whole. And another thing that we do is with the Sandals project, we have already outlined a number of training sessions where we will be bringing in teachers from different schools so we can share best practices. There are also programs for teenagers that we'll be bringing in as well, as we use this smart area that Sandals is so gracefully helping us to put together, that everybody is going to come together and pull our heads together essentially, so that we can decide how is it we can affect the other schools that may not be on board already.
Fantastic. I love that. Rachel, perhaps you want to reflect on that. I know it's something that is very important to your heart as well.
Definitely. And I think getting community footfall through our school was a really important aspect of rebuilding trust after a really difficult time in our island education. We're really lucky to have got a new school building back in 2010. So we have a fantastic facility with a theatre that is used by all the kind of community theatre projects. We've also managed to build up a partnership with the Arts Council. So we're a kind of focus area for the Arts Council England in terms of bringing cultural experiences to the Isles of Scilly. Lucky us. And we get lots of visiting performers, plays, music coming into the school. And therefore we kind of build up those people just going through and seeing what's happening here. Seeing the displays, seeing the students, that's been really powerful. We feel very lucky about that.
I love that. That's great, Rachel. Do any of the others panelists want to come in on this point around community connections and bringing community into your school? Perfect. Okay, let's move on to the next area where I wanted to touch on, which was just around this whole area of supporting peoples on outlying islands, and lots of the island groups that we've got kind of represented in the wider room often consist of a bigger island and smaller islands, and the kind of challenge that involves. So, Richard, maybe I could come to you first on that. What are some of your kind of top tips about trying to engage people who might be in some of the more remote areas of an island group?
I think trying to put them at the centre of activities. I mentioned this idea of the periphery being at the centre, and in terms of the sort of Scottish context, we've found ourselves in that situation, but it can apply to any kind of geographical locus. So it's interesting that Barra has come up, actually not just in my presentation, but in a number of others. Barra's a tiny island with a very small population, a very small school. Even compared to the rest of the Western Isles. So it's very important that we put some of these smaller island communities at the centre of what we're doing. And that's, very much part of our ethos.
Yeah, I love that point. Rachel, do you want to come in on that one as well? Because I know that the clue's in your name, 5 islands, and you managed to bring them all together.
Definitely. I'd actually focus on the teacher isolation on our little off island. That's something that's really important to us, because some of islands, they've just got one teacher, maybe a teacher and a teaching assistant. And I think it's really important to be aware of what an isolating feeling that can be, particularly if you're feeling that lots going on the main base and you're removed from it. So we've worked really hard at using technology to include off-island teachers in all of our meetings, in all of our briefings, but also to enable them to build up networks beyond the islands. So our off-island teachers are subject leads, they're training teachers on the different islands and on the main island and in our trust on the mainland. And really kind of that focus on every teacher as a learner and on empowering them to lead rather than to feel that they're just stuck off on a little island with 2 children.
Yeah, I love that point, Rachel. And if you follow Rachel on Twitter, you'll see both videos from her commute, which is on a sometimes bumpy boat from one of the off islands to the mainland island. Does anyone else want to come in on that point around off islands or smaller islands? Okay, let's move on. Island collaboration. This is a great forum for that, and it's a wonderful place for that to happen. But I guess it can be difficult finding partners and also kind of finding the right way to connect. So, Will, Christina, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your tips. You shared the portal that you've got, but what would you say, kind of on a human level, to educators or pupils that are trying to find kind of partners or partnerships in other islands?
Yeah, I think for educators, it's almost like a two-pronged approach where if you see it as professional development for you as the educator, and then also as a learning experience for the young people in your care, I think that's a good way to start going about doing it. So are there particular examples of good practice that you've seen on nearby islands that you would like to collaborate with and learn from? I think that's kind of one way to begin approaching a collaborative or a collaboration. Christina, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I just would like to add to that the online opportunities, because that's something also we discussed in our project that, for example, for Asti Palaya, it was, especially in the wintertime, really difficult to travel because only in the summer there are the tourism connections available by plane. So that some of the teachers sometimes may feel a bit isolated, but then we also discussed, of course, there are more and more these opportunities to also exchange online all over the world with other teachers, so that one doesn't have this isolation feeling, especially when one teaches a subject no one else does, for example, to have the possibility, but of course also for the pupils.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And one of the best things about being online is that kind of ability to have that community, even if it's not right next door to you, but to feel part of that global community, which we're all feeling right now. Last area I just wanted to touch on, and Carol, I want to bring you in first on this one, but some people in the chat have been asking about young people, students with special educational needs or disabilities, and some of the challenges that they can face, particularly in smaller communities where there might not be a massive number. How do you tackle that at your high school? And I'll come to others if they want to come in as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an issue in small communities, but it's a global phenomenon. So I mean, I just came from the States, and the increase, and I do think there's a correlate a little bit with the pandemic, but also because we know more. and we're responsive. So there's two-prong approach to that. And one first is just to really make sure that the teachers do need to be, as the first responders or as the first caregivers, they have to be aware of all the range of opportunities. But because there is a lot of challenge, hopefully there's use in technology. They're very fortunate, the students are, that there's a lot of technology where they can speech to text or they can have something read to them, or all of those different kinds of tools. We're a little frustrated because the exam board just switched that we can't use read and write, which we were doing. So we're going to try and convince them again. But those tools are great. And that's really where technology is just absolutely amazing. That is a perfect piece there. And then the last part is that you do need some people, additional people trained up. And so we as schools, I think, really need to encourage a lot more education around it, as far as, you know, graduating folks who can deliver access arrangements and really work with dyslexia, work with all of the different, you know, challenges that might be out there for students.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Carol. So we're going to finish off just by getting our magic wand out of the box and asking each of you just for a couple of sentences, what would be your wish, having been inspired by each other, for island education over the next decade? I'm going to come around in the same order. So Rachel, do you want to share your wish first?
Well, I think that lots of people have been talking about climate change and the impact, and obviously across this whole conference, the impact on islands. And we see it even on our little islands. We see little bits of the islands nibbled away every single winter in the winter storms. But somebody asked in the chat about the potential for AI for helping island students to become leaders in the battle against climate change. And I think that would be my wish, actually, is that, you know, island children, they grow up with the reality of the impact of climate change on their islands. But we've got real potential within our education systems to skill them up and to empower them to go out and lead way beyond the horizons of their islands in finding solutions.
Love it. Thank you, Rachel. Richard.
I would like to see us aiming for not just as good as mainland education. I wish that island students and mainland students alike have access equitably to the same opportunities, but the young people growing up on islands are able to get the most out of that unique opportunity they have for place-based learning, and all the richness that comes from that upbringing, you know, the island heritage and language and culture. So I would want them to see their, you know, supposedly remote location as an asset, not as a drawback.
Love it. What a great wish. Christina.
Yeah, actually a bit related to that, I would say, because I think, yeah, it's very important that island schools are seen, yeah, full of great potential, with chances, as said beforehand, to learn from each other. So that, yeah, the exchange continues or maybe even increases among the schools, and yeah, to learn from each other. Also what we did, of course, today. Yeah.
Thank you, Christina. Will.
Yeah, I think one thing I've learned through the project that Christina and I were involved in, but also that's been consolidated by hearing other people's presentations, that often what is taught in island schools is dictated by, I suppose, a centralized government in a city on the mainland. And then often what teachers teach is based on that perspective. So going forward, as most curricular systems go through, I suppose, phases of redevelopment after every 5 or 10 years, is to see more opportunities for island teachers to choose their own case studies and have the agency to involve island issues into their teaching in their classrooms, to allow the young people to learn about their own histories and their own geographies and their own stories of the places in which they live. I think that's very important. I'd love to see more of that going forward internationally.
Love that, Will. Thank you. Kisma.
Thank you. I think for me, it is about the policymakers, because I was just listening to Carol, and Carol is saying that the examination board, for example, would have eliminated the ability to go from reading to writing as part of the way that you can help the children who are challenged. And this is what I would like to see in the next 10 years, that our policymakers become part of the innovation that we're looking for in schools, and that they are on board with us so that they can see it how we, the few of us who are here talking about all the innovations that we are practicing in the classrooms, that can be translated to the wider community when it comes to the examination boards and how we actually bring forth curricula in the classroom. And so that's my wish, that we all get on board and that the policymakers can start to see that they too need to join the change process.
Thank you, Kismet. And Carol, you're on mute.
I get to go last, and I just want to underline just 3 things. The students being able to have their own forum like we just had. I'd like to underline what Kismet just said, which is the policymakers, because AI needs some regulation. We need regulation for that, and otherwise it's going to be a big challenge. And I really appreciate that people see the islands as actually a leader rather than somehow we just need some help. We are leaders in educational and innovation.
What a great place to end. Thank you so much to all of the brilliant panelists. I think island children are in great hands in your institutions and in your work. And yeah, a big virtual round of applause for you. And I'm going to hand back to Michaela just to close the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Ollie. And of course, a huge thank you to all of our speakers for such an insightful discussion today. For those of you who may have missed it, we announced very exciting news during our opening session on Monday. Island Innovation is partnering with the government and St. Kitts and Nevis to host the 2nd Global Sustainable Island Summit next year. All attendees of the Virtual Island Summit can get an additional discount on those early bird tickets, so please check the chat for more details on this. Our next session today will be Zero Waste Islands, a dream or a reality, coming up in just about an hour and a half. So thank you all again for joining us, and we'll see you